With over 10,000 parts, thousands of them are moving parts. It's no wonder there are sometimes issues that arise within a piano. Today we're looking at the top 5 issues that occur with pianos.
Hi, this is Ted with Alamo Music Center in beautiful downtown sunny San Antonio, Texas.
I'm Patrick Maury. You can find us online at alamomusic.com. If you haven't already, please subscribe to our YouTube channels, check out our other videos, sign up for notifications, like our videos, leave us comments. We appreciate your support. We love to interact with you. Ted, have you ever had something go wrong on a piano?
Oh, man.
Never.
All the time.
Never, right?
All the times, yeah. Matter of fact, a lot of performing pianists and professional musicians, they're what I call hack technicians. And these are the ones that, you go into a piano and before the gig, back in the old days, you find out what keys don't work, which ones need to be taped down. Look up into the dampers, check the pedals, see how many cigarette butts are substituting for dampers, because that's always a key sign that, hey man, the guy that played here knows how to fix a piano.
Well, it's interesting because we've, here at the store, we've had band techs before, people who are, mechanically minded, who fix saxophones, clarinets, trumpets. They've never, no knowledge of pianos. They can go in, find out how to fix the piano because it's just, it's intuitive.
And they're thrilled about one thing. As long as it's not inside the action, it's like, hey, this is bigger than band stuff. They're dealing with like little, clarinet parts and
instead of having the glasses on. And
and it's like really cool having big things to fix instead of small things.
And it's usually, and I've noticed this over the years, the more confident you are in doing it, there's a chance that you can go and figure out what's wrong, and sometimes realize, hey, when I hit this pedal and the rod's not activating, all I have to do is slip this thing underneath the slide here and it works again. And so there are common mistakes and common issues that arise in a piano. Sometimes they can be diagnosed and fixed. Sometimes you need to call in a professional, a technician, and those guys are, they're not cheap, but they really know what they're doing, and they can make a piano like 100 times better.
What's really funny is that whenever someone comes in and they say, yeah, I have a couple issues with my piano, and they start mentioning certain things, I'm hearing them and I'm listening to them, but because of working here, the first thing going through my mind is like, I imagine going through a Rolodex, like which tech can do that? This guy can do that. Okay, tuning is this guy here's for the, you start thinking like, how can we fix this problem? And what is it really?
Yeah, and so pianos, they have issues. It arises, again, there's over 10,000 parts in a piano. A lot of them are moving parts within the action, and issues arise. So we're gonna go over the top 5 issues that we've seen in no particular order here. These are just very common things that we hear all the time. You want to take away with number 1?
Yeah, the first thing is almost every time, whether it's a phone call or a customer walking in, a lot of times we get people walking down the street, they do a turnaround, they come back, hey, I have a piano at home, or this piano. And then sometimes we're here trying to sell a piano, and we encounter these issues in front of a customer. Mm-hmm. Okay, so a lot of times you have to, do your own tech hacking. The number 1 is sticking keys. Sticking keys, I've had some customers say, I'm having a problem with some sticky keys. And you're thinking, oh, it's probably this one up high or this one down low. You get there and there's a whole section that's just smashed down and it won't come back up. And so there's sticking key issues. Mm-hmm. Can be a number of things. The most common one on grand pianos, believe it or not, is the key slip is too tight. So when you push down on the key, it kind of stays down there because, the board's wedged up against it.
Yeah, the key slip's right there in front of the keys. If it's swollen in any direction, it could, prohibit a key from coming back up.
Sometimes they bow in, or they're bowed at a certain spot, particularly if it was moved recently or if it was held in storage, because a lot of times the way the pianos are strapped in, that key slip is absorbing a lot of the pressure to maintain whatever kind of blankets or covers. And
sometimes they tie it real tight and it's right there over the
And they all use a skid. So that's another thing that can cause the key slip. Mm-hmm. Another one is that individually between the holes for where the keys are at, whether it's on an upright or a grand piano, is the wool in there gets swollen. And so like there's that key stabilizer in there that just gets rough. And so those need to be turned.
Yeah, the little pin underneath the key, when it's
There's a front and a back.
Yeah, when the key goes down, sometimes that felt is swollen and it gets stuck on there, or it's at least sluggish when it happens. What about when things get dropped in on the action?
Oh yeah, that's not counting.
Pencils.
The pencils are really bad on both uprights and grand pianos.
They fall into the action.
Because they fall into the action.
And so a key might get stuck. And it's not the end of the world. It's just knowing what could be going wrong. So sticking keys are something, and we've told people.
Guitar picks, paper clips.
Especially here in Texas and San Antonio, we have, big ups and downs with humidity. And then when winter comes, sometimes that felt will just change a little bit. And so we always tell people if it doesn't self-resolve in a couple of days, if you grab the key, go up and down a couple of times, if it doesn't self-resolve in a day or two, or when the temperature kind of normalizes again, it's time to call in a technician. And we can send that person out there. We can get you in contact with a couple. But the sticking key sometimes self-resolves. Sometimes it's a bigger issue. And sometimes it can be a real bad issue. But for the most part, it's very common to see sticking keys on your instrument. And even on a digital instrument, sometimes you get sticking keys. And there's just a whole bunch of reasons why that can happen. It's not the end of the world. Don't panic.
Yeah, matter of fact, the more sticking keys you have that are next to one another is generally the easier problem. On an upright, that means kind of going in there and pulling the pencil out, because the pencil can make those keys stuck in a down or an upward position. And then sometimes you push on a key and it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
And that could be because there's a pencil underneath the keys. The next item, you want to talk about the next item?
Trap work. So
trap work.
Trap work is your pedal assembly on a grand or your pedals on an upright piano. But really, I think people, I don't want to say they overvalue pedals because they're very important to the function of the instrument, but it's not like a car where you're kicking it in and you have your clutch and your gas pedal, and it's essential to the overall health of the instrument.
That analogy you encounter every now and then when someone's checking on a piano and they don't play, they don't know much about a piano, but none of the pedals work. And so they're thinking like, the gas is always on or the brake is always on, the piano just won't go because the pedals are broken.
So pedals being broke, the trap work is what it's called, the trap assembly.
And that is probably one of the most simplistic things to fix on a piano. On a grand piano, the rods that are there, whatever function your trap work, you have the damper and the sustain and whatever function the middle pedal is, the rods are kind of designated for a certain one of those keys, pedals. And the same thing on an upright piano, but on an upright piano, there's a separation between, you have two pedals that the trap work go this way and one the other way. So one is actually the damper and the other one is the sustain. And then on a lot of upright pianos, you get either that mute switch or you get a bass sustain. The more expensive intermediate to professional models will have a full sostenuto pedal in the middle on an upright, very rare. But trap work is really easy to fix. The problem is you have to take apart the bottom of the piano to find the rod. And then usually it's just a dowel that came out of the spot. It's one of the simplest things to fix
It's
on a piano.
It's a very simple thing to adjust and a simple thing to fix. So if your pedals aren't working the right way, don't panic. It's a very, cost-effective fix. And if sometimes you are able to figure it out yourself. But yeah, the pedals are something we're like, hey, my pedals aren't working. So that's a very common thing. Do not panic.
And this issue does happen in front of customers. Sometimes we have second or third party delivery guys come in and deliver a grand piano. You're showing it to a customer and the rods got put in the wrong pedals and it doesn't work. And so sometimes I say, hey, I want to show this piano in a minute or two. I'll go in there and straighten it out.
It's a very, very quick fix. Do not panic. It's not the end of the world. Our third one, another very common one. This thing sounds horrible.
That's probably because it hasn't been tuned in its lifetime.
And so a lot of people are like, oh, I just get it tuned once, or, it was tuned a couple years ago. Why does it sound so horrible? Tuning is much, it's like getting your oil changed on a car. It's essential to the livelihood of the instrument, not only how it sounds, but how it's going to perform over years to come, because it's really important to make sure those strings remain in the right frequencies.
The other thing too is that you want to make sure that the piano does sound like a piano instrument and it doesn't become more like a blurred kaleidoscope of a wave-making machine, which is beyond like a saloon piano. Even some of the digital pianos now, they have honky-tonk and saloon. It's like, I've really never played a piano that far out of tune, even in a saloon, even in a barn. They do go out of tune, but they become, like I said, a wave-making kaleidoscope. You can tell it's out of tune.
Yeah, so it's a very common issue. Usually with getting a great technician out there, you can get it tuned. Maybe a pitch raise is needed if it hasn't been tuned in years. But getting it tuned and then maintained over 6 months to a year, you want to kind of get it revisited very frequently, especially if people are playing, because it's very common that it will go out of tune. The way that pianos are tuned is basically through tension. The pins are in a pin block, and that pin block is just it's layered wood, but they're just in there through tension, and so over time they're going to loosen and change.
A piano is just like a gigantic box guitar with about 226 strings. So if you can imagine having to set each one, and some of the notes, not so much in the lower end, but from around near the bottom all the way up to the top, have at least 2 or 3 strings, and those strings need to be exactly with the same force. Otherwise, that one note is out. And then when you start multiplying that, by the time you get to 88, you have all kind of blurred sounds. But the most valuable thing about having your piano tuned is not so much the end result and how the instrument sounds and plays and the range of expression. The most valuable thing about having a tuner come out to visit with your piano and to service it is that you're going to find out if there's some problems with other issues that show up, like broken keys that are really truly broken, broken hammer shanks, or some kind of dampers where the connectors are broken off. Anything that needs maintenance, a tuner is the guy that's going to identify major problems or major repairs that need to be done on the piano. He may also recommend himself or someone he recommends coming back to do the last 2 items which we have on our list, which is number 1, regulation, and number 2, voicing. But I think we should talk about voicing first.
Yeah, let's talk about voicing. A lot of the times so with tuning, you hit a note, one note can sound out of tune, and people a lot of times ask the question, how does this one note sound out of tune? It's because there's multiple strings in certain notes where you are, depending on where you are in the piano. In the bass section, there's usually 1 string that's wound. As you move up, 2 strings, and as you move up further, 3 strings. So one note can sound out of tune, but it's not only the tune of the hammer striking the strings. There's something called voicing, which really kind of affects how the piano is interpreted to the player or to people listening. And sometimes marketing has done a great job, and with a lot of manufacturers are saying, oh, well, that piano brand is bright sounding instruments, and these ones are warmer, darker sounding instruments. And yes, a lot of the sound can be on materials that are used within the instrument. But I would say the over 50% of your sound and over 50% of the coloring of the instrument, whether it's bright or dark, has to do with voicing.
Voicing is the same thing. The best explanation for voicing is, imagine you have a dulcimer, and you have your selection of hammers. You have hard rubber hammers. It's the same thing as playing marimbas. They have big yarn, little yarn, tight yarn, all different
rubber
kinds.
ball.
So you could have like a ball peen hammer, and then you could have like a wooden hammer, then you could have a wool hammer. Now pianos are all wool hammers, but the beauty of them is you can make them harder or softer, and that is what voicing is all about.
Yeah, so whether you're adding or whether you're trying to make the wool fluffier and go with the needle and actually fluffing up, or if you're trying to make it harder, they can add, basically they juice up the hammers,
right,
and they make it a little bit of a harder impact, a stronger attack, kind of changes the voices to be a brighter sounding instrument. So voicing can really, especially with a qualified tech, can really transform a piano if you want to change the tonal quality of your instrument. Especially advanced players will get a tuning and a voicing on their instruments, because they can really change the overall dynamic control of the instrument.
Well, they can also monitor, because a lot of times people like a moderately bright, they like a really kind of bright but boomy bass section. But up top, that's where people's ear begins to differ. Some people want nothing but a crystal clean bell tone, and others want something that I need it kind of softer up there. I don't want it too bright.
Yeah, so just something that is always at the discretion of the owner of the instrument, and if you get a good tech, you can really transform an instrument to be a wonderful sounding playing. And I think the playing kind of fits more into the regulation.
Well, the playing is the thing that all the other things we mentioned is getting the instrument up to par, and then that's in terms of sound and functionality. When it gets to regulation, that means it's tuned and it's voiced, and the guy says, now I want it to play the way I want it to play. And so all of these keys and sections should kind of respond in a certain way. And some pianists like a lot of key dip, some like no key dip. And that's balancing the action and where the hammer lifts off of the key. And a lot of that depends on an individual.
Yeah.
But regulation is getting that piano to work, not necessarily toward the medium perfection. That would be the case if you were regulating it for like a Chopin or a Tchaikovsky contest where you have all these, hundreds of players. You want them all to be playing on an even scale machine. But if it's your own piano at home, you think, I want my bass to be a little heavier because I always have a tendency to pound too much. I played in a rock band, so give me a heavier keys on the bottom. You can get that.
Yeah, and in the context of thinking of these as issues, just understanding that the regulation is off and understanding, hey, it's not responding the way that I want it to respond. A lot of people think, hey, it's not good. This piano's broken. It's not. The keys feel all.
Well, yeah, it's like if
light.
you're just going up and you notice that the keys don't. The lines on the piano, the spaces between the keys, some of them are crooked and some of them are off. And then this key takes more pressure than this one, so it's like. Dun, 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 dun.
So that would be a regulation issue.
That's a regulation issue. Or the person that had it only played right here, and the piano's great in this section. It plays like brand new. But right in here, it's just worn out.
We see that a lot.
And we see that a lot.
And so it needs a little bit of care, a little bit of regulation. So those are our top 5 issues. Again, sticking keys is a big one. It's not the end of the world. It's sometimes very easily diagnosed and fixed. There's the trap work. My pedals don't work. There's tuning. It doesn't sound good. It's just a tuning issue. There's voicing, which is it's too bright or it's too warm and I can't hear clarity.
It's too muddy.
It doesn't sound the way I want it to. That can be fixed with voicing. And then regulation, it doesn't feel the way it should or the way I like it. So those are our top 5. If you've had any other issues, we'd love to hear about them. If you leave some comments, I'm sure other people have had countless issues with their instruments. There's cosmetic issues that occur a lot of the times that don't affect the playability of the instrument, but this always chips on certain pianos because the way they move the piano, they put it down on the cheek block and it always gets chipped. There's a whole bunch of issues that can happen. So please leave some comments on what you guys have seen with your instruments, common issues that you've seen arise. Hopefully this was informative and informal as we are informal wearing polos. But this is Ted, I'm Patrick, we're with Alamo Music. You can check us out on alamomusic.com. Thank you for watching.